election campaign hasn't officially kicked off, but tonight's rallies and town halls are definitely giving us a sense of what's to come. So time finally to bring back the At Issue panel for an extra busy season. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj is here in Ottawa. And I'm so pleased to see you all. You don't believe me, but it's true. Okay, so we're waiting for the writ to drop, obviously, a favorite game in Ottawa and political circles to try and figure out when that should be. So let's just start with that question around timing and what, not necessarily what you're hearing, but what would be the advantage to calling it, this Sunday or next Sunday? Chantal.
I think voters won't notice whether it's called this Sunday or next Sunday. The opposition parties, though, will, because as soon as the election is called, they start getting more equal coverage with the Liberals, and the government loses the aura of the Prime Minister making an announcement, and Justin Trudeau becomes the Liberal leader. So up to a point, it's to the Liberals' advantage to run the clock. I'm not saying till the 15th, but there's no real advantage to the government rushing to call the election.
And do you feel, Andrew, that they are ready? Because if it's the Liberals' prerogative, then I guess that's the question, whether they're ready or not.
Well, they haven't appointed or nominated all their candidates, Freudian slip, all their candidates as of yet. Surprisingly, for a governing party, governing good times, you'd think they'd be all ready, but presumably by the deadline, they'll be all lined up or close to it. But yeah, I think they may foment a pretext of saying, let's wait until after the Manitoba election. That gives them we're being respectful, et cetera. But I agree with Chantal, though, they'll delay as long as they can.
The two Manitobans care about that election. That's Andrew and I. Althea, what do you think?
Well, there's a big advantage to going later in the sense that the government is still the government. Cabinet ministers get to basically campaign on taxpayers' dime. David Akin, our colleague at Global, tallied up that just since July and August, the Liberals have made more than 5,500 announcements, totaling more than $15 billion. So, the longer they can do that, we're obviously focusing a lot more on them when they get to do that. And then they can go to the polls and tell Canadians that stuff they just announced, well, the Conservatives are going to take it away from them. So there's certainly a big advantage to going later.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this latest episode for the NDP, this issue with the defectors in New Brunswick. Not all of them who actually said they were leaving the party were leaving the party. And not about trying to sort that all out because it's complicated, but what it tells us about the state of readiness of that party's war room, because it took them 2 days to figure out that this wasn't accurate. Chantal, what do you think is going on there?
Well, first, I think many of us who follow politics otherwise closely were astounded to learn that Jagmeet Singh had not found his way to New Brunswick a single time since he became leader. That's rather strange. Also, the election is about to be called. The date has been on the books for 4 years, and the notion that the NDP has not appointed, nominated, found candidates in New Brunswick and PEI is striking. I find it even more striking that in this province, Quebec, where they elected the most MPs, they are still missing more than half the candidates that they need. So overall, it speaks to an absence of readiness. And no, I don't think that it's because they've got star candidates hidden in their back pockets that they're only waiting for the call to suddenly stun the country with.
What do you think, Andrew? There seem to be a myriad of problems that the NDP has as they head towards this election. Yeah,
when their best talking point is only 9 officials have defected, not 15. That's not a great news cycle for them. I agree with Chantal. I mean, they're having trouble finding candidates for the same reason that a lot of their star candidates, their star MPs are retiring, is that this is at best a save the furniture and maybe worse than that campaign looming for them. I think it's something like 150 nominations they still have to fill with their election just about to be called. Fundraising, they are trailing badly behind the other parties. They were never totally at level with them, even in their best times, but they're now about, I think, raising about a quarter as much as the Liberals, a sixth as much as the Conservatives, and about the same amount as the Green Party, with whom they are increasingly level pegged in the polls. So it shows you just how far they have fallen from that time when we thought just 4 years ago that they might form a government.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The change from 2015 to now is sort of shocking, Althea.
Well, today Jagmeet Singh came out and he said that in a few days they were going to have 302 candidates nominated, and they are about 180 now. So you're wondering what the vetting process looks like. And October 1st is basically the day where if you're on the ballot, you can't get pulled out. So, expect, I assume, some bozo eruptions, more candidates that have peed in cups, or the Liberal candidate in 2015 who said that smoking cannabis was good for your baby. There's just not going to be that sort of thorough vetting that we've seen in the past. The NDP quietly tabled their annual report from last year. They're $4.5 million in the hole. Yeah. And so I think that the fact that they're so late might just speak to the fact that they don't have any staff. Yeah. They don't have anybody to do this work.
Let's be clear here. I've covered campaigns since 1979. I've seen the NDP have bad years and better years, but I have never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I've only covered the NDP for 15 years, but I would agree with you. So let's move to the Conservatives if we can. They've got a full slate. They were the first party to have one. They say that Andrew Scheer's been, practicing debating for months, that they're ready to go. What does that tell you about how real an opponent they will be to Justin Trudeau, to Singh, to May, to whomever? Chantal, I'll start with you again.
Well, it's Andrew Scheer's first campaign, and he used to be the Speaker in the House of Commons, so he didn't spend a lot of time in the media fray for all those years. Mm-hmm. So I think he needed the practice. I'm not so sure that the prepping is the main concern that the Conservatives should have going in. I think the summer has been better to the Liberals, despite the Ethics Commissioner's report, than it has been to the Conservatives. They seem to have hit the ceiling, and they're challenged for growth, and they need growth in Ontario, Quebec, to actually make it to government. So I'm curious to see how he does do in real life in a debate. I think it's going to matter.
Yeah, Andrew, I wonder if they thought that last ethics report that found the Prime Minister had done things wrong. I wonder if they thought that was going to be more than it was, or if they misread that somehow, or if there's a way for them to get that back and take more advantage of that.
Yeah, I don't know how much they were counting on it. It did do him a lot of damage in the spring, but what damage was done seems to have been done before that report, and it didn't really change much beyond that. Except to the extent that we'll have to see, has it continued to erode people's general beliefs about Trudeau, not the specific issue, but their general perception of them. And that's one of those things you find out during the campaign, whether he's able to work the old charm again or whether it falls flat for him. So the Tories have got, they've got lots of money. They've got all their candidates nominated. They've got a strategy of focusing on affordability. They're lacking much in the way of a platform, a real raison d'etre for why they should form a government, as opposed to why you should be sick of the existing government. And they don't have a particularly compelling leader. And much as he may have practiced and much as they may have tried to introduce him to him, he's better known among Canadians now. He's certainly not better loved, and he certainly hasn't been terribly impressive. So he's got a mountain to climb, if you will, in this campaign. As usual, of course, if you come in with low expectations, as Justin Trudeau did in 2015, you've got the opportunity to exceed them. But you actually do have to step up your game once the writ is dropped.
Althea.
Well, I'd say there's an advantage that Andrew Scheer has, is that the Prime Minister's personal popularity numbers are really low. So many people think the government is on the wrong track. I, like the rest of you, have been crisscrossing this country, and people are really upset with the Prime Minister, whether it's progressives on the left who feel like he sold out his climate change agenda. He promised them that social licenses to communities if they didn't want to have pipelines, and he went out and approved the pipeline twice and then purchased it. Or it's people on the right who are upset about deficits or upset about ethical failures. I think the SNC-Lavalin was a big boost to the Conservatives. They weren't able to, frankly, take advantage of it because the Liberals beat them at opposition research with that video about same-sex marriage in Andrew Scheer's own words. But I think that report was worse than most people here in Ottawa expected.
Yes, it is true that Trudeau's image has suffered, but he's very fortunate that it's between him and Andrew Scheer. I think he would be in huge trouble if someone like Thomas Mulcair were still leading the NDP. But at this point, there is no point in pretending that the race for Prime Minister is between only two people.
Yeah. The trouble the Conservatives have, they have the most solid base. I mean, that 33% or whatever it is pretty rock solid. They have the least upside, at least at present. And you would think to the extent Liberal support is soft, it's mostly soft to the left. There's a lot of people who are quite aggrieved with the Prime Minister, but they're mostly on the left for reasons why they don't think he's done enough on the environment, for example, or enough on Indigenous issues. So again, unless we hear something more from Scheer and the Conservatives as to why center-right voters who went with the Liberals in 2015 should leave them now, then it's hard to see how he gets a whole lot of upside from there.
But it seems like the Liberals are going to do that work for them. I mean, frankly, if at the moment what it looks like we're going to be fighting an election campaign is the Conservatives saying we're going to give you tax cuts and tax credit and focus on affordability and making your life cheaper, and the Liberals are saying we're going to invest more, then those blue Liberals might abandon the Liberal Party and vote for Andrew Scheer. And the Liberals are hoping that the Green and the New Democrats will come back to the fold when they see that Andrew Scheer can possibly become Prime Minister. Okay. It's like the same playbook year after year.
I got to leave it there. I would just add, it will also depend who shows up, right, for the Liberals, and not whether the people, whether they go somewhere else, but whether they vote at all. So there's something else to keep our eyes on. Okay, I'm so glad you're all back. So we're just going to do this every Thursday now until it's all over, and then we'll continue. Okay, thanks everybody. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast. We've got lots of extra content there. You can see it on iTunes, any major podcast app, also on our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational. And something else I'm doing every Thursday, Elamin Abdel Mahmoud and I host our new podcast. It's called Party Line, so you got lots to listen to while you're working out.